Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jay. If you're new here, I do variety and all kinds of other fun stuff with pop culture and things that I care about. One of those topics is Metal Gear Solid, and if you're not new here, welcome back. You know, recently there was a lot of, I would say, news around Metal Gear Solid Delta. Both me and my son have been following it in depth. He's gonna be running off now because he hates being held on camera. And one thing that I noticed was Fox Hunt. Now, I'm hoping that by the time this comes out, there's not more news about Fox Hunt quite yet, because it would probably date the video quite a bit. But right now, what we know about it is that it is essentially like a modernized take on camouflaged hide-and-go-seek. And we did see a little bit of that here, and it is also, as well, a kind of successor to Metal Gear Online. Now, if you're new to the Metal Gear franchise, which I would say I'm not new, but I am newer to its online experiences, there are still some ways to play the old ones, but in general, a lot of them are not preserved very well. Like Metal Gear Online 2 is by most people considered the best. That's the era from early PS3, and that is around Metal Gear Solid 4. But you can still play Peace Walkers online, somewhat, at least on the old HD PS3 collection. I was able to connect and do a little bit of matchmaking around on there. But in general, it's kind of just like up in the air on fans to preserve it, which sucks. And that's a topic I want to talk about a different day, but it does play into today's topic, which is no matter what we find out more about Metal Gear and its online future for multiplayer, when it comes to Fox Hunt, it does have a lot to live up to because a lot of people did love classic Metal Gear Online, whether they got into it with Metal Gear Online 1, 2, or 3. And also now, with Metal Gear Online 2 being mainly preserved by fans on PC, and I would personally argue Metal Gear Online 3, the one on MGS5, being not as good as 2, this is something where people are looking at it and they were saying, okay, is this Metal Gear Online? Is this Metal Gear Online? And when it came out, it was Fox Hunt. A lot of people were already let down. So I want to talk about this for a few minutes today. If you enjoy this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe. We appreciate you very, very much. There are ways to support our channel, which I will share later on and throughout the video. And I do have a question of the day for you, which is, what do you want to see from the future of Metal Gear? Now, this can be single player, multiplayer, or whatever. I personally have pitched one of my passion project fan games in the past, and I'd like to do a little more of that on this channel. But in general, I think that for the online component of it, the biggest and first step for me that would really ease a lot of criticism around Fox Hunt already before we even know that much of it is if those old experiences were better preserved. Now, like I said, there is still some online connectivity to Peace Walker. I don't really know how much. I know it was kind of not great trying to get into matchmaking on private matches with a friend. I couldn't really get anything else to work, but I do know that Metal Gear Online 2 on MGS4 was shut down officially a while back. Luckily, it is preserved on PC by very dedicated player bases, but that really should not be on the fandom. You know, that really should not be on average people like you and me to keep games alive. I really don't think it should. With Konami going back to these franchises, big things like Silent Hill and its classic games, and especially Metal Gear Online and those, you know, classic releases of it, they've kind of been left by the wayside. And I would argue that they're doing a good job with the single player portions of MGS, and now they're remaking Metal Gear Solid 3. But whenever you change anything, add anything, there is going to be heavy criticisms, and that's why I think preserving the original Metal Gear Online games in some kind of package would be a first step. But I think a second step as well is to have a better plan than what happened with the Metal Gear, I would say, multiplayer experiences near the end of Hideo Kojima's tenure and after. Now, this isn't really necessarily on him. You know, he was always first and foremost a single player guy and a narrative guy, and I really do respect that about him. But when it comes down to it, there was still a Metal Gear Online 3 with MGS5, The Phantom Pain. And there was also as well a Metal Gear, I wouldn't say a Metal Gear Online game, I would say a Metal Gear spin-off that was tied to the internet, which was Metal Gear Survive. Now, I personally don't hate Survive. I know that's already like a cardinal sin. I do think just in general, like, it's a fun thing to play around in the Fox engine, because it was just a really good engine. So being able to play around, fight enemies, do things like that, I personally can have a fun time with. But in general, when Survive came out, this was kind of like after all of the fallout with Kojima and Konami, and people were pissed. And I would argue they were rightfully pissed at the way a lot of things were handled, and they did not want that game at all. It just was not on their radar. It wasn't something they wanted to exist. I don't want to say that people didn't give it a chance. Some people did, some people didn't. But in general, that wasn't really what people wanted. And the people who did like it and did enjoy it, and even just game preservationists like me in general, who want a game even like that preserved, even with that, there's a online connectivity requirement where even though you can play the game by yourself, it still isn't preserved because it still requires that online requirement, even now. So if that ever gets shut down, which previous Metal Gear Onlines have, that's also gone. My point being, the best Metal Gear Online experiences that people loved, right? Like, people loved the Peace Walker co-op. People enjoyed Metal Gear Online 1. People loved Metal Gear Online 2. And from what I can tell, a lot of people really did enjoy 3, but thought it was broken. That's kind of the camp I fall into. I found Metal Gear Online 3 a fun but very messy experience, which I'd like to talk about more in depth in a different video. Any of those groups, though, most of what they like is not well preserved, right? When it comes down to it, these games were not ones that you could play offline with bots. They were not really ones that had anything other than their online capability for the online components. And so as they trickle away or are shut down over time, and it ends up just on fans to preserve them, that's already not a good look. So you have to have some kind of plan as to what the future of Fox Hunt will be, instead of it just being a throwaway service that is going to be retired down the line with no preservation. And that's something I don't really know if Konami is willing to do. The second thing I think they have to do, other than just preservation, which I still hope can happen for those old games and this one in some way, but the other thing that I think they have to do is planning on balancing. I personally think that one of the biggest issues that Metal Gear Online 3 had on the Phantom Pain was balancing. Now, going back to it now, and again, it's a topic I think could be a whole video in and of itself that I'd love to talk about, the game is a mess. The Phantom Pain itself is a brilliant game. I actually love it, and I even love the Ground Zeroes, prelude to it. But when it comes to the online, I feel like they had such an opportunity to do things like some kind of co-op missions or some kind of hide and seek type thing in the same way. And there are some good modes, obviously, but in general, nowadays, the only mode that's really populated is Bounty Hunter. Other than people trying to do some kind of boosting XP stuff in other lobbies, it's pretty much just Team Deathmatch. And that goes to show you how big of a fall off that did have. There are still games that are very much alive, online games, from well over a decade ago. But of course, Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain being a PS4 game, it's not new, but it's not so old that I would expect no one to care about it. I think it does say something when you have a bigger active player base going back on PC to Metal Gear Online 2 to show you that there was more thought put into that version of the game. And so when I'm looking at that, right, I'm looking at near the end of Kojima's tenure with Konami and the team that had worked on that, which to my understanding, he was not the online guy. But when I'm looking at the team that worked on that, and then I'm looking at Survive after that, I'm looking at people not connecting with those versions of the online as much, and I'm looking at the lack of preservation around all of them. I feel like you need to be very careful with whatever the future is for this. You have all of the eyes on you from these old games. You have new players' eyes on you. And while I do think that the core and heart of Metal Gear will always be those single-player story modes, I do still think that if you include something in a video game, it should have value, it should matter, and it should have some kind of longevity. The fact that there are old Call of Duty multiplayers that you can go on and play against bots on that somehow have more preservation than old Metal Gear Online games is bad. The fact that there are other online games that are much older than Metal Gear Online 3 that have a more healthy, active player base to this day that is engaged with the game to this day, even though some of those games don't have updates, is bad. You need to consider these things with the future of Metal Gear so that looking back, there aren't people making video essays, there aren't people making, taking pot shots, there aren't people with heavy criticisms of what you put out. Because the idea of hide and go seek in the world of Metal Gear is great. It's always been great. And it does make me wonder right now, before we get more information, which I'm looking forward to, what the difference will be that separates the mode Fox Hunt and the future of Fox Hunt from the corpses of Metal Gear Online experiences that kind of litter the floor in the past of the franchise. What will actually make this something that has mainstay potential of any kind, and what will make this something that people remember? Those are things that I think they need to live up to, because while all those other games did have their problems, like I said, people are still going back to this day on PC and preserving Metal Gear Online 2. People are still taking that, and they had to jump through so many hoops to do it. It was a game that was never officially released on PC. It was a PS3 game of all things. So people had to get Metal Gear Solid 4 and Metal Gear Online 2 running on PC in general, and then had to preserve it themselves. And they care so much about that they're still making it work and they're still playing it. Will Fox Hunt have that same level of dedication? Because I haven't seen that level of dedication for any other Metal Gear Online type experience that's been made so far. And that was before the departure of one of the architects of this franchise. And now you have a lot more to prove even off of that alone. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. What do you think about Metal Gear? Do you think that they should be bringing back those old online experiences? Do you think that they should be preserving them? Do you think that it's time to just leave it all in the past? I personally want them preserved, and I would love to see more of a co-op focus at some point, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts down there. If you want to support this channel, we have many different ways to. We've actually played through several Metal Gear games over on our Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays. The link is in the description down below. We also do have a Fortnite code that goes to help support our channel. And finally, as well, we have our own store, CosmoBunny.shop, where we sell coasters, keychains, trays, and more made out of recycled paper from comics, manga, magazines, and more. These are books that have been damaged, and what we do is we take the paper from those books, we turn it into new transformative art pieces for your home in a new medium, and we recycle the rest. So we recycle, we reuse, we actually transform that into new art, and we hope you enjoy it, and we hope you'll check that out. Discount code DJAY123 will get you 10% off those items. And also, as well, we do have handmade resin jewelry over there. Things like earrings, also things like bracelets, all kinds of stuff are over there. We appreciate you. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shui.